A new study out of Singapore claims that COVID-19 is no longer infectious after 11 days. To talk more about it is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, these findings could cause changes in current discharge policies of patients who tested for the coronavirus.
Yes, so this brings things down just a smidge, right? It's not that big of a difference. We had been told it was 14 days. People were asked to quarantine for 14 days after being infected with the coronavirus. Now they're saying it's 11 days. And as you said, this will help with discharge. This will help with freeing up a lot of that hospital space and the shortage on ventilators and other equipment and hospital beds. This should definitely help a lot. A lot is coming out in the last couple of weeks about how we once believed this virus does spread. So for example, last week it was about how it doesn't spread on surfaces. So people were scrubbing down their groceries. They were scrubbing down any deliveries that were coming to their homes. They were worried about it being on their shoes and their clothing, etc. Now we're being told that that's not the case either. So, it's better to be safe than sorry, as the old adage goes. And I think that will continue to be the case. But now we're finding out we're fine-tuning is a better way of putting it, how exactly this spreads, how long it lasts, and how careful we really need to be. But again, I think the more careful we are, the more successful we will be in hopefully soon eradicating this disease.
Now, a lab in Wuhan, China says they admitted to having not one, not two, but 3 live strains of bat coronavirus, but they insist none of the source of the coronavirus pandemic. That might be a little hard for many people to believe.
Yes, including you and I, correct? You see this headline and all of a sudden you're like, aha, obviously they're admitting to it. But the article goes on to say that they admitted to having the 3 strains, but then later say, because we have these 3 strains and because we're able to study them, we'll tell you that there's enough of a difference between COVID and what we're finding in these 3 strains. So we're wiping our hands clean of any responsibility or any direct correlation between these strains and what is spreading around the world.
China's top diplomat, Wang Yi, accused lawmakers in the United States of wasting time and ignoring lives as the virus continues to spread. Wang says the U.S. needs to stop its smear campaign, Lisa, against this country. He also says the two countries are kind of pushing towards a new Cold War.
Well, that's for sure, right? The war of words between the two has continued on and on. The U.S. blaming China and wanting them to take more responsibility in telling us where this virus originated, and drawing the lines, connecting the dots between this virus and the state of affairs between the two nations before this virus spread, the tariffs, the banter between the two, and not coming to a resolution on economic trade, etc. And China doing the opposite, spreading the propaganda that this was actually perhaps even a U.S. spread virus, and that the U.S. is spreading a smear campaign or blaming all of this on China where there is to be no blame. The bottom line here is that China is at an advantage because they're taking the opportunity to use the rift that already exists within the United States. They might have a direct line to Chuck Schumer, for example, a U.S. lawmaker who says to Donald Trump, let's say it even originated in China. Who cares? What you did was delay your response. When lawmakers in this position of responsibility and power say such things, we give that opportunity to China to say, yep, you're right. It's the U.S. that's really missing, dropping the ball here and missing the opportunity to quickly, triage and do what they need to do with regards to this virus. So, the Chinese have it good because the media here in the United States, the mainstream media, the left-wing politicians, they're all on the side of the Chinese against the President of the United States.
Thousands have been protesting in Hong Kong over a new China security law proposal, Lisa. Hong Kong police fired back with tear gas and water cannons as pro-democracy supporters protest the new Chinese law.
Yeah, if things weren't bad enough to bring the people of Hong Kong onto the streets, this announcement surely will. The Chinese have announced that they will open up a security intelligence office in Hong Kong. We're going back to colonial times, in essence. What they want to do is spy and control and take away any autonomy that the people of Hong Kong have. That's exactly what the people of Hong Kong were on the streets protesting, that they wanted to shake off the control that the Chinese have over them, and now they're trying to exert even more control. Well, obviously, this has been met with a lot of outrage by the people of Hong Kong, who are out on the streets again and causing a ruckus all over again. And there's going to be no end in sight as long as the Chinese insist on having this control over the people of Hong Kong.
The first of 5 Iranian oil tankers has entered Venezuelan waters carrying more than 1 million barrels of fuel. Now the tankers are being escorted by the Venezuelan Navy and Air Force. The U.S., which is monitoring the situation, imposed sanctions on both countries. Now both Venezuela and Iran have warned Washington, Lisa, to not interfere with the delivery.
Yes, we have an exclusive on this at the Foreign Desk. We looked into this and interviewed some experts on why this would even have to happen. Meaning, you have Venezuela, which is already an oil-rich state. Maybe they're not refining their own oil, but they do have the supply. And then you have Iran delivering the barrels of oil, the amount to which would only last perhaps a few weeks at most, perhaps much less. So the question becomes, are they in fact carrying just oil, or is there more to it? Is this a shipment of other things? Now, we need to back up here and rewind and talk about the relationship between Caracas and Tehran, which has been going on for years upon years while nobody was looking. You had direct flights going between the two nations, carrying members of Hezbollah, a terrorist group supported by Iran, setting up cultural centers within Venezuela, and setting up, more importantly, dual-use businesses that would hide the sale of narcotics, weapons, and funnel terrorism money from Venezuela to Iran and vice versa. So you have this influence of Iranian terrorism, Iranian-supported terrorism, right at the U.S. and Canada's footsteps, right, the North American footstep. Very important story. The influence of the Middle East and, more importantly, of Iran in Latin America is extremely important. It's something that's not talked about enough. And thank you, Hal, for bringing attention to this story. We have to keep our eyes on these ships, where they're going, and more importantly, what are they carrying?
Afghan's President Ghani began a recent process recently of releasing up to 2,000 Taliban prisoners as a goodwill gesture after the insurgents proposed a surprise ceasefire during a recent Muslim holiday.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every year at this time, we talk about the ceasefires and the goodwill gestures of the terrorists during the time of Ramadan and Eid, which is the culmination, is the last day when they break the fast and they stop the fast, basically. It is a widely celebrated holiday within the Muslim countries, and every year they announce they're going to be better and they're going to have a ceasefire, and it's very short-lived. And in this case, you have both the Afghan president and the Taliban, who have not been able to come to terms on anything, announcing a ceasefire and trying to release some prisoners. And before they had talked about releasing these prisoners, they had talked about it in the realm of coming together for a truce. But then when COVID happened, they also released some prisoners because of that. So you have a lot of things going on here. But again, we have to keep our eyes on Afghanistan to see whether or not the Taliban will keep their end of the deal, whether they will allow for there to be some semblance of peace for that country after so many decades of war.
While many countries around the world are making great strides against COVID-19, Lisa, hospitals in Chile are under tremendous strain as coronavirus cases there near 70,000.
Yes, and 70,000 is probably a lower number when you look at somewhere like New York or Italy. But for a country the size of Chile, with their resources or lack thereof, this has been horrific. In Latin America, you have Chile and Brazil that are really under the buckle here. Their cases are growing exponentially. And again, with their lack of supplies, they are not able to fight or to be able to handle the number of cases that increase day by day.
Now, speaking of South America, U.S. President Donald Trump has issued travel restrictions of non-U.S. citizens coming from Brazil as the Latin country sees a surge in coronavirus cases as well.
Yeah, Brazil is over 300 thousand. So Brazil has been number 3 in the world with the number of cases, and their number of deaths are still multiplying. They have not hit their peak yet. They are definitely long away from flattening the curve, so to speak. So Donald Trump has announced that that non-citizens traveling from Brazil will not be able to come into the United States. Obviously a logical and practical move for a leader to do that, to hopefully prevent the spread from Brazil again back into the United States.
One of the stories we've been talking about here at Bridge City News is the thousands of people that showed up at a park in Toronto recently. They've had enough being cooped up, self-isolation. They went out there, many without masks. But let's also talk about where you are in the United States, the thousands who flocked to beaches in Maryland, Florida during the Memorial Day long weekend, many without face masks, not physical distancing. There were also pretty big gatherings at the Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, yeah. If you haven't seen these photos, it's as if they were trying to pack into these pools and lakes and beaches like sardines, as if, there was, forget about social distancing. It's as if they were trying to be extremely social. This is be logical. That's all I can say. We talk about this all the time in my family. It's a matter of taking responsibility, each person unto themselves and to others. Look, as things open up, I think people have been cooped up, and I get that. They want to be out and about, particularly with the holiday weekend here in the United States. We have Memorial Day weekend and the summer months coming. So I know that people are just itching to get out, but at the very same time, we don't want to see a resurgence of this, and we don't want to see yet another curve. And people have to be smarter than that. Go out, but be careful. Keep your distance. Here in Los Angeles, the governor has announced we're going till July 15th, and we're going to reevaluate at that point. That's a long time. It's almost all of summer. And people are with their kids. They want to get to the beaches. They want to get to the parks. They want to get fresh air. And I think it's people are going to start doing things underground and against the law because they want to get out. And again, if we are each careful and able to keep our distance, maybe we can get out and at the same time prevent from the surge in the number of cases as well.
Yeah, we have to take the precautions. We don't want another deadly second wave of COVID-19 hitting so many of our schools, seniors' homes, and of course, all around the world right now. Australia's most populous state is bracing for travel chaos as schools and offices reopen there.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how Australia gets so many headlines when they had so few cases. They had about 7,000 cases and about just over, I think, 100 or 203 deaths. Look, even one death is too much. I don't mean to belittle anyone who is experiencing this with their families. But at the same time, would we be having this conversation if this were just another year of the flu and the numbers look pretty much the same or even worse? It's a pandemic. So that's why we talk about even Australia. And Australia has been extremely methodical in how they open up, even though they have such few numbers. So with a 102 death rate, they still have a 3-phase plan as to how to open in a way where children who are returning back to school or people who are traveling to certain travel destinations or hitting the beaches, etc., that they are able to keep within the guidelines of the phase that they are in order to prevent the second wave from occurring. So I think Australia is a great place to watch and see how they unfold this 3-phase plan and how it does. And we'll look at their numbers and hope that we can replicate that, and as long as we get good results.
Let's bring things a little closer to home now, Lisa. Experts found bones of dozens of mammoths in Mexico City. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is an interesting little story. This excites people who are involved in anthropology and in excavations. This is a follow-up from a whole family of these animals that were found in October of 2019, just about 6-7 months ago. And now they're finding more and more within the same area. So there's a story to be told here. And people who are involved in these excavations and have dedicated their lives to the anthropology, they love to put the story together. So there's obviously a bigger story here of a family of these animals, or a community of them that lived in New Mexico. And again, to put that story together it's very interesting. When I was in 5th grade, I remember going to a quarry and finding one person in the class found a dinosaur imprint, which is it's so interesting for people to put these stories together. And nowadays, to find something from way back when and to put these bones together, it's really fascinating.
And for me, I just had a flashback to the Flintstones. Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Thanks, Lisa.
My pleasure.